Welcome back to Prime Time on ANC. Senator Francis Pangilinan wants the creation of a roadmap to address the country's food security concerns. Senator Pangilinan, who's the chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Food, says various sectors must convene and identify targets to deliver results.
The senator adds the government should focus on agriculture as a growth driver. Among the areas he cited are support for farmers, development of facilities, and research. And to discuss this issue with us, we're joined here in the studio by Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, the chair of the Committee on Agriculture and Food. And you can also join our discussion tonight. Send us your comments and questions through Twitter using the hashtag Primetime or post them on our Facebook page, ANC 24/7. Senator, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
And you can also send your comments directly to Senator Kiko on his own Twitter page. What is your Twitter account?
Kiko Pangilinan.
That. Very imaginative.
Mati-check mo ba ngayon?
Hindi. Mamaya.
Okay, 94 million Filipinos as of the moment, and
yes,
it is expected that for each year that passes, there's going to be, the number's going to blow up to 2 million per year.
Yes, based on the growth rate,
yes,
population growth
The question is, will we have enough food for everyone? Well, if the situation remains the same and the growth continues on?
Well, if we don't make the necessary interventions now, we will have a serious problem regarding being able to make food available to our people. And that's precisely why napakahalaga na we really put agriculture modernization in the front burner. And in fairness to the President, the biggest increase for the 2012 budget, the biggest increase in terms of all items is for the agriculture and fishery sector, around 53% increase in the budget. So what we are putting our money where our mouth is, ika nga. But the challenge now is how to appropriate it properly and make sure that every cent counts. Dahil for the last 30 years, neglected ang agriculture and fishery sector.
Bakit nagkaganon, Senator, considering that we were really an agricultural country to begin with?
We continue to be largely agriculture-based. That's why, we are deluding ourselves into thinking we can reach developed nation status by avoiding or not focusing on agriculture modernization. 34% of your labor force directly employed by agriculture and fisheries. If you add the indirect employment, such as storage facilities, transport, it jumps to up to around 60+%, another 20%. So almost 2/3 practically are agriculture and agriculture-related jobs. And therefore, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say, if you want a multiplier effect that will have a strong impact in the entire economy, you have to address the incomes of your agriculture workers.
But the sad part about that, Senator Antony, is that the farmers and the fisher folk that we have are among the poorest of the poor that we have in the country. Here you have all these people, nasa kanila lahat ng resources.
In fact,
pero sila rin ang gutom.
In fact, they are the poorest of the poor. The poorest are in the agricultural rural areas, and the poorest of the poor are in the fishery sector. Unfortunately, and this is the irony, in other countries, there is dignity and there is respect and there is primacy of agriculture.
For sure.
In Japan, in China, in Thailand, they say the farmer, agriculture is the backbone. The farmer is the backbone of the nation. In China, every time the Communist Party of China has its meetings and its Congress, number one in the agenda is agriculture. Precisely because the first freedom, sabi nila, should be freedom from hunger. And again, I will go back to my point. We cannot hope to achieve developed nation status in the next 15 to 20 years if we ignore or we disregard, the voices and the sentiments of that vast majority of our poor people who are in the agri-sector.
Let's talk in more detail about the roadmap that you're proposing. All right, a lot of administrations have come up with some kind of food security plan. We knew that even under the administration of former President Joseph Estrada, he wanted to use that as a cornerstone of his government. But has there been any detailed roadmap, you think, that has been successful? And what would make your idea for a roadmap any different?
Well, this is interesting, we don't operate in a vacuum. The political reality is that in May 2010, people went to the polls wanting change. And that's why they voted the president in an unprecedented way. But they all knew that voting him into office is just, it's in fact the easy part.
Okay.
And wanting change, they're now all, people are saying, what do we do next?
Sure.
The agriculture sector, I sat last year, I was elected in July of 2010, and a few months later, around 5 months, we convened for the first time in a long time, some say for the first time in history of the sector, the Agriculture and Fisheries 2025. 60% of that was private sector. You had the biggest players there. San Miguel was there, Universal, Robina, all the big business, agribusiness, the farmers were there. 60% private, 30% government, and 10% academe. And we identified key targets. Where do we want agriculture to be in 15 years? Because agriculture is always long term.
Right.
You can't have a year-on-year plan for agriculture. You have to look strategic. So key in that summit, for the first time in perhaps 20 years, one, of course, key is good governance. We had to restore faith and trust in the department because of the scandals and the controversies of the swine scandal, the fertilizer scam, and so forth. So good governance was strategic and key. And then we identified upping our farmers and fisher folks' income. We identified increasing public and private sector investments in agriculture. We've also identified smuggling as critical. And then we've identified organizing our farmers and our fisher folk. This is critical. We have 4.3 million farmers, and the average farm area is 1.5 hectares.
So when you want to say organizing, you mean to tell them to group them in farmers
associations, enterprises, community enterprises, cooperatives. If you look at the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act, which was passed in 1997, it's all there.
1997.
It's all there, except that ang galing natin gumawa ng batas, doon tayo sa implementation ng batas nagkakaroon ng problema. In fact, many of those, sabi nga nila, mga Thailanders nag-aaral sa UP Los Baños. In fact, when I was there, the deputy director of the Rubber Institute of Thailand, they are the largest exporter of natural rubber in the world. The largest. The deputy director studied in UP Los Baños. So magaling tayo. We will not lack in terms of talent. We will not lack in terms of skill. What we lack is in terms of a comprehensive plan to implement this program.
So you have the Food and Agriculture Modernization Act of 1997. Is that not sufficient enough to be a roadmap? Because you want a new roadmap. So that's what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is well, that's been 15 years. And we just have to update it. We just have to enrich it. But by and large, making farmers bankable by giving them credit, access to credit, giving them insurance. That is, that has been there since.
That's been there.
So for us, it's really now the roadmap to effective implementation. And the roadmap to effective implementation, if you ask me, is to build a constituency around agriculture and food and bring all stakeholders together. And that's why AF 2025 is critical.
Do you think maybe when big businesses, the agro-industrial sector, gets in, that they will exploit the resources and not, in a way, help the lowly people rise up for themselves?
You're right. That could be one area that needs addressing, really. Right. But it's time to shift paradigms. Even these big industries recognize. Our average age of our farmers is 57 years old.
Wow.
I was in Sinaloa and Laguna.
You're much younger than that.
Obviously.
Way.
In Sinaloa and Laguna, 5 farmers who came up, farmers representatives, and I talked to them while on stage. One was 60, the other was 61, the other was 71, the other was 74, and the other was 78. A new generation of Filipinos will not go into farming.
Oh,
Why?
definitely not.
Because it's not, for them, it's a vow of poverty. 2, the average income of a farmer and a fisherman is 23,000 a year. How does he survive? He has to have off-farm incomes. Pero kung agriculture lang, because it's subsistence farming, because it's not modern, because it's not supported by, effectively by local government and government as a whole, then you have 23,000 pesos a year for direct incomes from the farms on average. So this has to change. And how do we change it? I think we change it a community at a time.
Community-based.
Local governments must come in. The private sector must come in. Young people, the youth must come in.